What percentage of the world's cargo traffic has been affected or rerouted because of this disruption in the Red Sea? And what has happened to the cost either per container or of shipping costs more generally in light of this disruption?
So overall, there's about 20% of the world trade that moves through the Suez Canal. And as a result of the military action or the attack on the vessels, you're seeing prices into the U.S. Gulf, East Coast, and West Coast up anywhere between 200 and 300% from where they were back in October and November.
These are shipping costs alone, up 200 to 300%. This reminds us of what was going on during the pandemic, right?
Correct, but here at the height of the pandemic, when you go back to the peak of those rates, we're still, while it's still high, we're at about 20% of the peak that we reached in 2021 and 2022.
Is most of the traffic that is being disrupted, is it Asia inbound through the Red Sea and Suez Canal into Europe, or what? Is that most of it?
Yes, the bulk of trade, Europe relies the most heavily on the Suez Canal for both their import and export markets, whereas the U.S., with the three coasts and the Panama Canal, we are less beholden, in a sense, to the functioning of the Suez, with possibly the exception of some of the Red Sea countries, and then India, for example, is taking a major hit. There are now a shortage of containers in India to service some of their exports back to Europe and the U.S. But Asia, for example, can still ship via the Cape of Good Hope, even though 7 to 10 days, 15 days longer, and the West Coast.
So Stacey, let's turn to some of the retail companies, maybe U.S.-owned, maybe European-owned, that are being affected because of this. Name some names. And I guess these would be goods manufactured in Asia that are coming into the European market or moving elsewhere for sale. Give us some names that are being affected here.
Sure, Tyler. And of course, as you know, when shipping goes off, it's like the nervous system of retail shuts down. And we saw that during COVID. We're starting to see prices come up again. We're starting to see the return of air shipping, which is more expensive, just at the time that we were cycling all these costs post-COVID. But some of the names that have the biggest exposure in Europe, we're talking about PVH, U.S.-owned companies. We're talking about Ralph Lauren. We're talking about Nike. We're talking about Foot Locker, 20+% over in Europe. Of course, H&M has a huge exposure, 60%. Hugo Boss, 60%. So it's, most of the U.S. retailers have a significant exposure over there. There are some smaller ones like Lululemon that's got high single digits, or Urban Outfitters. So nobody's going to go untouched with this, but at least the good news is we have our factories open, unlike COVID. And of course, we aren't in this insane demand boom for goods where all of a sudden there's nothing on shelves.